Well, this is chapter 1, part 2. I'm not sure why the other video, it basically cut out and I couldn't seem to stitch two videos together. But yeah, let's continue on. So what would the first cell's four characteristics be? Well, hopefully, I would love to discuss this in class, of course, but gotta have a cell membrane, right? Can't be a cell without a cell membrane. Has to have some sort of genetic material, probably DNA. Has to have a cytoplasm to hold, and then at minimum you have to have ribosomes because ribosomes make proteins, and so you have to have genetic code, you have to be able to make proteins, you have to be able to maintain homeostasis with a cell membrane, and then you have to have a cytoplasm to be able to have form. So those four characteristics would definitely the first cell have to have. So again, this is just an example of a phylogenetic tree. Cell with a nucleus, you can see, eukarya, archaea, bacteria, three domains of life. And so taxonomy is the branch of biology that identifies, names, and classifies organisms. Every year in science, there's new organisms that are named, organisms that we've never found before. Like how in the world, but it happens. I mean, I've heard a statement that we know more about the surface of Mars than we do the oceans, and so this is that science, taxonomy, and systematics. Study of evolutionary relationships, and so. This is, in general, comes from Carolus Linnaeus, and these are the levels of classification. So domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. There's a easy saying, King Philip came over for great spaghetti. Did King Philip come over for great spaghetti? And so, we start very general, most inclusive to most exclusive, which eventually you get to one name. Every living organism on the planet has one specific scientific name. And so archaea are the ancient ones. They adapt to very extreme environments. They can chemosynthesize food. They have unique chemical characteristics. They are not bacteria. Bacteria we are all familiar with. Prokaryotic cells, again, they do not have a nucleus. They adapt to all environments. You can find bacteria basically everywhere, similar with archaea. They can absorb, photosynthesize, or chemosynthesize food, and they have unique chemical characteristics. And then eukarya, where we're at, in the kingdom Animalia, but you have plantae, fungi, protists. Protists are very unique. Algae and protozoan, slime molds, etc., so on and so forth. So three big domains of life. And so scientific names are universal, Latin-based and binomial, bicycle, two wheels, right? So two-part name. The first word is the genus, and so Homo sapiens down here is our name. And so the genus is Homo, and the species is sapiens. Sapiens is always lowercase, italicized, or, both words are italicized. And these are scientific names. Again, this is just the foundation of naming in biology. And so here's some famous examples. Gators. Chordata means you have a notochord sometime during development. Reptilia. Crocodilia. Have some fun trying to say those. LSU tigers. As I'm making this video, that hurricane's kind of going towards Louisiana. Pray for them, please. Definitely a big storm. UCF Knights, humans, here we go. Primates, we are of the order primates. So we, evolutionary, are related to the chimpanzees, orangutans, monkeys. I went to USF. That O shouldn't be capitalized, it's weird. But Bos indicus, the bull. And then, of course, we're the Mustangs, right? And so Animalia, Chordata, Mammalia. Perissodactyla, I think I got that right. Equidae, Equus, Cabalus, the wild Mustang. And so the study of life reveals common themes. When we dive into biology, we're going to realize that nothing stands on its own. Everything is interconnected. Everything is linked. Everything is related to something else. It has an effect on something else. Your life is not an island. You're not an island. You are part of a very big world, and your actions matter. And so organization, life is organized. Life has to have information, it also has to be able to copy it, pass it on. Energy and matter, interactions, evolution. This is life. So life is definitely organized. And you can see here that everything starts with atoms, and then you start building molecules like DNA, proteins. Those form cells. Cells form tissues, organs, organ system. Eventually you have an organism. But then that organism has a role to play in the population, in the community, in the ecosystem, and finally in the biosphere. Our world is a living planet. Would love to show you this video if you want to. You can watch this video. It's about hummingbirds. Maybe I can put a link somehow in the video section, but there is, great form leads to function. I mean, how do hummingbirds fly backwards? I mean, the anatomy, form leads to function. I would almost write that down. Form leads to function. And so here's organization again. This is a feedback, organized systems exist at many levels. And so here's an example of a cellular level, amount of free amino acids. Amino acids make proteins. So you're making protein T. That goes up. So you break down protein T. Okay. Organs can influence, levels. It determines the amount of sodium in the body. And then at community level, there's also community level systems help determine how many voles. So lots of grass, more voles, but if there's predators around, voles numbers go down, and then what does that mean in the long run? So that's ecology, and we'll definitely dive into that. So biological systems are dynamic. They're constantly changing. They're constantly adapting, moving with the flow. And so energy is one of those ways that it adapts. One of the things that life has to have, of course. So energy is the ability to do work. And so energy is required to maintain organization. It takes energy to maintain order. I don't know if you ever had like a messy room, but it takes a lot more energy to clean it up than to destroy it, right? So it takes energy to maintain order. But it also, we have to have energy to carry out metabolism, all the chemical reactions. And so the ultimate source of energy is the sun, which of course I'm sure is common sense. AP biology, all really smart. But photosynthesis is the foundation of life. If we don't have photosynthesis on our planet, life doesn't exist, because everything that we eat is either a plant or ate a plant. And so we have to have photosynthesis as a foundation of life. So acquiring nutrients, eating, photosynthesis. This is heterotrophs right over here. Fungi, bison, buffalo. I love those buffalo nickels. I don't know if you collect coins, but. And so an example of being able to maintain homeostasis and using energy to do so are feedback mechanisms. And so positive and negative. So positive is basically pedal to the metal. So it speeds up a process. So we're trying to maintain homeostasis with feedback mechanisms. Negative, something's changed, like a teeter-totter, right? Something's changed and we're trying to get back to it. So we're trying to reverse the change. And so, yeah, I would like for you to think about 3 examples of positive and negative feedback. I'll give you one example of positive. Childbirth. I've been the witness of both my daughters' births. I was there, didn't pass out. What's up? But the first time I was really nervous. But the second time I actually, was able to enjoy the moment a little bit more. But yeah, no, positive. I mean, contractions, right? The body knows that baby needs to get out, and so instead of reversing a change, it goes pedal to the metal. Contractions increase. As far as number goes, the time between them decreases, and that body's like, basically, come on, we gotta get this baby out. Negative is example of a fever, right? If a fever's too high, something's happening in the body, and so yes, the body does initiate a fever, but it doesn't want it to get too high or last too long, so the body wants to reverse that. So an example, a very common example, is insulin. So, diabetes, insulin. Insulin allows cells to basically take in glucose. It basically creates these doors where glucose comes in. And so insulin, diabetics either don't make insulin or don't respond to it. Type 2, type 1, the different types of diabetes. But here we go. So you have high blood glucose level, insulin producing cells in the pancreas. It makes insulin a hormone. And then it circulates through the body, and then it allows liver and muscle cells to take in glucose. And so glucose is taken up, and so it dramatically decreases. But however, if you are pre-diabetic or already displaying symptoms of metabolic disease syndrome, sometimes you can have high blood glucose levels. And so that leads to nerve damage and kidney damage and cardiovascular disease. It can lead to bone and joint problems and feet problems, even skin and teeth and gum problems. And so, but this is a negative feedback system because something's too high. You see that? See the high stimulus right there? Something's too high, so it's out of balance. The teeter-totter's off. And so we're trying to reverse the change. And so negative feedback, we're trying to reverse it, change it. And so insulin is made. And then insulin allows, creates basically these doors that allows glucose to go in. So this is an example of negative feedback. And so information, again, common themes of life, information comes from DNA. And so DNA basically tells us how we look, but more than that, it also kind of influences how we act. It allows us to copy and repair cells. Skin is replaced very quickly. Your gut is replaced every 30 days, the lining of your intestines. And so we need DNA, we need information. But not only we need that information, we also need it to be read and utilized correctly. And so here's DNA. So DNA is a double helix. And so from DNA, you have genes which encode for proteins, the specific sequences of nucleotides. Nucleotides are the building blocks of DNA. And then those genes make proteins, and those proteins determine your phenotype, what you look like, how you act, what you can digest, how you respond to the world around you. And so DNA are like letters of an alphabet. You have the same 3 letters, but it depends upon how they're rearranged. I mean, R-A-T could be rat, it could be tar, it could be art. I mean, it could be a lot of different things. And so it matters how DNA is aligned. Curly hair and straight hair, difference of DNA. And so DNA has basically four letters, A, T, C, and G: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. And so here's an example of a really crazy, you have the lens of the eye is able to focus light because lens cells are tightly packed with transparent proteins called crystalline. So there's a crystalline gene. I know this is a picture from a textbook, I'm sorry, but this is a crystalline gene, and here's the letters of DNA. And then that DNA is transcribed into RNA, and that RNA is made into proteins, and those proteins, those amino acids interact to fold correctly to make a crystalline protein, which allows light to go through your eye, which is crazy, right? Like it's insane how complicated that is, and you'll see more about that down the road. And so here is just a very brief example of, maybe a brief review from biology, but basically DNA has to be able to replicate itself. This is called the central dogma, by the way, of biology. And so DNA also has to be transcribed, scribes write, and so DNA has to be changed into a different language, and then that's RNA. RNA differs in multiple different ways. And then RNA is translated into protein. I love the pizza analogy. I've heard it multiple times, but basically, if I'm trying to make a pizza, pizza has protein, right? I have a cookbook, but let's say it's Italian. I don't know Italian, so I need to transcribe it into English. And from English, I'll be able to build, take the instructions and build my pizza and cook it. And so I have to go from DNA to RNA and then RNA to protein. And so yes, and just to review, just one more time, evolution, because it's such a core theme of biology, populations change through time. And so Charles Darwin proposed all living organisms are descended through natural selection. So natural selection leads to adaptations. These can be structural or physiological or behavioral even. And these adaptations increase an organism's chance of surviving and reproducing. So here's an example. Tree frogs, ground frogs, different frogs. My wife does not like frogs. Anytime the frog is in the house, she stands on a chair and screams, and I have to try to help. But yeah, so all of these organisms are specifically adapted to their environments. And so this tree frog has toe pads, so it's an adaptation for climbing. A different frog species has extended webbing, which allows it to glide from tree to tree. Literally, this frog glides from tree to tree, which is insane to think about. This frog is better at swimming. This frog is strong, short legs, walks along the ground, so it's meant to walk. I mean, these are specifically adapted to their environments. And so in science, some people say like, oh, evolution is just a theory, but please don't, I would say don't say that. Please understand that theories are supported by lots and lots of evidence. There are some things from an evolutionist standpoint that, biblically speaking, we would have some interesting times discussing and debating. And we'll talk about that down the road. But evolution, there's so much good science behind evolution as far as like microevolution and things adapting within their species, within their kinds. And so the resulting understanding of processes by which populations have changed and diversified over time and continue to evolve is backed by a lot of good science. Okay, so evolution can be observed and measured. And so basically science is this. This is just the general flow of science. You make observations, ask a question. So science always begins with observations, like asking a question. And then you start forming a hypothesis. We will be doing science, this year, of course. We won't just be learning about it. We will be doing multiple activities. And so making a prediction, designing an experiment, and then reevaluating the experiment. Sometimes going back and like, oh man, it didn't work out. What should I do differently? Understanding how to use statistics to understand if our results, are they significant or not. Do our results support the hypothesis? Science is a collaborative effort. Let me see if I can speak. Collaborative effort. And so it literally builds upon itself. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from each other. And we need to be able to understand each other's viewpoints. I mean, there's a lot of interesting movements going on in society today where scientists who maybe don't hold a specific view are being canceled, basically. They're removing videos from YouTube. They're not allowing them to speak. I mean, that's really dangerous. I mean, how unscience can you be that you're not able to listen to someone else's viewpoint, that you actually just cancel them and basically just disregard what they have to say? That's very unscientific in nature. So I want you to look at this. There's printing these pictures bigger in the assignments tab in my north side, but I want you to kind of read through this activity. So the goal of this class is to prepare you, of course, for college science and pass a test, but also we need to get better at understanding that data tells a story. Investigations tell a story. Data tells a story. What story is being told? We got to get better at that. And so here's an example of an investigation where they basically expose frog eggs, reproductive tissues, to a drug. And so I want you to go ahead and read through this investigation and answer these questions. And you can pause if you want. And it's also on my north side. And then also part 2, these questions as well. Okay? So hopefully this was helpful, these 2 videos. I'm sorry that I had to make 2 instead of just 1, but hopefully they were helpful. I hope y'all are doing well. Stay safe, be well. Remember, God loves you so much. Can't wait to see you again. Until then, let me know if you have any questions. I'm sure I'll be getting with Mrs. Artil hopefully soon as well. But until then, guys, God bless.